All righty. Well, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you're joining us from across the U.S. I'm Kevin Broussard. I'm the Programs and Finance Director for the U.S. Association of Blind Athletes, and really excited to have you join us today for our first ever Blind Soccer Town Hall. This will be the first in a series of different community discussions, and I just want to start off by saying that our CEO, Molly Quinn, unfortunately, she was planning on being here, but had a last minute travel hiccup and is somewhere flying over the Midwest right now. So she would love to be here. Maybe she's tuning in on the Wi-Fi, but not able to join us today. I know many of you on the call today. For those of you I haven't met, nice to meet you virtually, and thanks for jumping on today. USABA, we first got started with this blind soccer journey in 2018. And really what spurred this whole crazy idea of starting a sport from scratch was around that time, there was news that Los Angeles was awarded the 2028 Olympics and Paralympic Games. And as part of being the host country, one of the biggest benefits you get is that you get an automatic bid in every single sport that's on the Paralympic program, and blind soccer is one of those. The only problem was there wasn't really anybody playing blind soccer. And so in 2018, we set out on this initiative to get more people to be playing blind soccer, to grow the game. We want to grow the offerings that USABA has for blind and visually impaired Americans, and really live up to our mission of impacting and improving the lives of blind Americans through sports and recreation. And then there's also the component of creating a national team and being a part of the Paralympic movement. And so in 2018 and 2019, we made some incredible strides of getting the game off the ground and finding some incredible leaders and people in our communities who got programs started. And then unfortunately in 2020, we had to hit pause with the COVID pandemic. But during that time, during the pandemic and until now, it's been great to see the continued engagement that our blind soccer community has continued throughout this time. And that passion is still there, and the game is growing as quickly as ever. So for those of you who've been part of that journey so far, we want to thank you for that. And for those of you who are trying to learn more and join our movement here, welcome aboard. And we're really excited to move forward with our discussion today. Just a few kind of housekeeping items. The meeting is being recorded. And then we ask that everyone remain on mute unless you ask a question towards the end of the presentation. And we are going to hold any questions until the very end. So if you want to pose a question, feel free to pop that into the chat, or there's also a raise hand function when we wrap up the presentation towards the end. If you want to raise your hand, then you can unmute and ask your question at that time. So before we kind of jump into things, I do want to give a quick rundown of our USABA staff members that are on this call and that will be presenting here shortly. And we do have an ongoing PowerPoint presentation that will be changing throughout the discussion, and we'll be sure to give a description of anything that's on screen as that changes too. So joining us on our USABA staff today, we have our newest staff member is Sarah Hartman, who is our Partnership and Development Director. We also have Jaime Garcon, who is our blind soccer manager. Jaime came on in August of 2021, and I know many of you have connected with him. We also have Katie Smith, who is the coach at Ohio Blind Soccer, and she has worked several of our USABA blind soccer camps as well. And then we have Bill Kellick, USABA Communication Manager. And Bill will be helping coordinate the Q&A towards the end and answering any questions there. So, just kind of want to give everyone a little bit of a state of blind soccer and where we're at this moment and where we'd like to go. Kind of taking a look At the participant list here, it's a really good mixture of who exactly is playing blind soccer. And we just had a slide change, and there's for a description on the screen, it's there's a few bullet points. It says who's playing, U.S. Soccer Innovate to Grow, soccer clubs, schools for the blind, and how we grow the game. So I'm just going to run through a couple of those talking points and what we're doing. And so again, looking at a few of the people that are on the call here, it's a good mixture of exactly who is playing blind soccer right now. And as we know, there's different regions and cities across the country that are reducing their COVID protocols, and people are getting back to play, which is a great thing. But we have schools for the blind that are playing. We have soccer clubs across the country that are playing. We have groups that are part of USABA grant programs as well. And so we have youth athletes, we have adult athletes as well. And we know that soccer is a game that can be played by anybody and everybody. And so that's what we're starting to see unfold across the country, is that there's a need there. People have a desire to play blind soccer. For those who have played, it's very addictive. You have a chance to play it, you play it once and you're kind of hooked. So we're finding that out a lot. Even groups like Parks and Rec from city municipalities are playing as well. So a good range of people that are playing across the country. There's about 12 different organizations that have teams. And that's just the starting point, though. So we know that's going to grow as the year goes on and as more people are aware of blind soccer because of programs like this. I mentioned earlier some of our grant programs that we have. And the biggest grant that we have at the moment is with U.S. Soccer. It's their program called Innovate to Grow. And with that, we have 6 partnering cities across the U.S. And the grant funds are used to help provide infrastructure and grow that further. Beyond that connection with U.S. Soccer, USABA staff members were also part of the Disability Soccer Committee. That's part of U.S. Soccer. And over, since 2018, we've had a relationship with U.S. Soccer. And we know that there's a really vast sighted soccer community in this country. And we're working really hard to make those inroads. And our staff, for example, has talked to probably 6 or 7 different MLS teams, professional league teams as well. We want to make sure this is a group effort, not just in the blind soccer community, but in the sighted soccer community. Outside of LA 2028, we have the World Cup. It's going to be here in 2026 as well. So a lot of positive movement on the sighted soccer front that we can build that momentum off of too. And so, yeah, there's different soccer clubs. We have a few clubs that have started across the U.S. We want to get more going. We also have some competitions starting, which is really excited. We're planning on creating some sanctioned competitions and tournaments starting in 2023 as well. And then schools for the blind. And Jaime is going to get into that a little bit further on what we're doing from a physical education perspective. But, really, we're all in a very unique position where we're all part of a movement to grow this game from the ground up. And each and every one of us plays a critical role in that growth, in making sure that we're all moving in the same direction. And we hope that today's town hall is really the first step in that. We've made some great strides over the last couple of years, but as we go into what we consider to be our first blind soccer season, we're really excited to have everybody a part of this conversation. We have some things in motion already, but we always appreciate athletes and coaches and volunteers, referees, anyone's feedback, so we can make sure that all input and opinions are heard, and we take that into consideration as we build out this great game. So want to thank everyone again for jumping on board, and I'm going to pass the baton over to Sarah Hartman, who's going to talk a little bit about marketing and our Sport Ambassador program.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and hello, everyone. Really excited to be here. We have changed the slide in the screen. It reads Sport Ambassadors. That's the topic that I'm discussing, and it has the names of our new ambassadors which I will read to you shortly. As the newly certified national governing body for two Paralympic team sports, goalball and blind soccer, and by building out our endurance sports program, we have a lot of exciting news to share with the world. And of course, we have a lot of work to do. There's community building, there's education, there's awareness, and of course, fun. And we need help to do that. So we have started a new program called the USABA Sport Ambassador Program. And through their athletic and personal accomplishments in the sport of blind soccer, we identified a 6-member team for blind soccer and this new Sport Ambassador Program to help us spread the word about USABA programming and the blind soccer movement. We're truly grateful to all of these ambassadors for their service, their leadership, and their mentorship. You'll soon be hearing from them on social media and meeting them at in-person events. I'll take a moment to introduce each of the ambassadors, many of whom are here tonight and one of whom you will hear from shortly. The first is Katie Smith, who's from Columbus, Ohio. Kevin mentioned her earlier. She's a blind soccer coach and has been one for 4 years. She's helping us with the national team development. She is a PhD candidate at The Ohio State University for adaptive sport, PE, and visual impairments. We're so happy to have Katie with us on the ambassador team. Next is Bailey Martin from Hubbard, Iowa, who's one of our emerging stars from our Team USA development camps. Bailey is an accomplished athlete in track and field, cross country, swimming, goalball, beach baseball, and now blind soccer. And we're so happy to have Bailey on the ambassador team. Next up is Kevin Brown, who's from Falls Church, Virginia, who is a big, important part of the blind soccer community in that region. Joining him is Ricardo Castaneda from Fort Worth, Texas, who is another emerging star athlete. Happy to have you guys on the team. And last is Casimir Huerta from Novi, Michigan, who in addition to being a blind soccer powerhouse is also a United States veteran, and we thank him for his service. There is a 6th member of the blind soccer ambassador team who will be announced at a later date, so please stay tuned. And as I mentioned, joining us tonight is Katie Smith, our USABA Sport Ambassador and blind soccer coach from Ohio. And I'm gonna have her unmute herself and chat with everybody about our brand new social media channels and Facebook group. Katie, welcome.
Awesome, thank you. I am so excited to just chat with every one of you about our new social media. On the slide, we have USABA social media, and what we would love for each and every one of you here on this Zoom call to do is to like, share, follow our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account. So all of it is under what is named USA Blind Soccer. So when you go on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, that is the handle that you're looking for, at USA Blind Soccer. And we are just so excited to be a part of that. We will also be having a group. I think Bill actually, he put in the chat all of those links. So go ahead towards those links if you have the time. And like and follow them. We will also have a chat just to talk everything about blind soccer and answer any questions you have about upcoming camps, clinics, and kind of what the growth going on with USA Blind Soccer here at USABA. So I am just so excited to share that with you and would love to turn it back to Sarah.
Thanks so much, Katie, and a happy early birthday to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
And I, again, would love to have everybody join us in the Facebook group, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we're running a little contest. So anyone who likes, follows, shares, gets their friends on there, anybody who's part of our social media channel by the end of this month, that's March 31st at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time will be entered to win a HyperIce HyperVolt. HyperIce is one of USABA's national sponsors, and their recovery tool, the HyperVolt, is a percussive therapy device, and I'm telling you, it is life-changing. It will make your recovery a dream. So get on that contest, follow us on social media, and thanks so much for being part of the community. And now it's my pleasure to bring on our USA Blind Soccer Manager and my colleague, Jaime Garcon. Jaime?
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. I gotta apologize. My Wi-Fi went down as it happened, so I lost my cool background. But I'm doing it from my phone, so we're still good. I'm gonna be talking on my slides. My first slide is the IBSA enrolling classification process, the sport governing body for judo, goalball, and blind soccer, the classification process for male B1s, male B2s, B3s, and women's B1, B2, and B3. So IBSA is the International Blind Sports Federation. It's a highest performance sport organization. This means that it governs and promotes sports for people with visual impairments. In addition to its role as an advocate, IBSA is also officially responsible for the day-to-day running of a specific number of sports as an international federation. These sports are goalball, judo, and blind soccer, all of which are contested every 4 years at the Paralympic Games. IBSA ensures that each is constantly expanding into new countries, maintaining rules and regulations, building partnerships, and that we have a sustainable anti-doping program for all of the countries. IBSA advocates for their inclusion at the Paralympics, where they meet the requirements of the International Paralympic Committee. In order to compete at IBSA or an IPC competition, an athlete must go through a process called classification. For the Paralympic Games and elite IBSA events only, athletes are eligible to compete. However, any athlete with a visual impairment is allowed to compete at a domestic level. Classification is an assessment of a person's ability and impairment. It helps to ensure that parasports remain fair. The first stage is to go through a series of tests to ensure that the player has an eligible impairment. This means that their disability affects their ability to play soccer according to some minimum requirements. Classifiers are ophthalmologists and optometrists who are recognized by IBSA and the International Paralympic Committee. Each classification system must meet the IPC athlete classification code if a sport is not on the Paralympic program. Male B1 players compete wearing eye patches and eye shades, and the rules of the game are adapted. As of right now, women compete as B1, B2, and B3 all in one classification. I'm gonna go through the different letters so you guys can understand better. So B1s are athletes who have very low visual acuity or no light perception. B2 athletes with a B2 sport class have a very high visual acuity than athletes competing in the B1 class and or a visual field of less than 5 degrees radius. B3 athletes with a B3 equivalent sport class have the least severe visual impairment eligible for IBSA sports. They have the highest visual acuity and or a visual field of less than 20 degrees. Once again, for the Paralympic Games and elite IBSA events, male B1 athletes are eligible to compete, and as of right now, women competing with a B1, B2, or B3 classifications are all in the same group. However, any athlete with any visual impairment is allowed to compete at any domestic level here in the US. I'm gonna go through my second slide, which is camp and initiatives for 2022. I'm gonna describe the ITG programming and special events, clubs, camps, and clinics, campabilities at Brockport, New Jersey, June 26th through July 2nd, youth ID camps in Colorado Springs, July 18th through the 22nd, and the USA Blind Soccer ID camps. And I misread, is campabilities at Brockport, New York, June 26th through July 2nd. US Soccer Innovate To Grow is currently supporting our Building Blind Soccer initiative. We have launched 2 out of the 6 cities across the country that have started programming. These other 4 have been identified and will start in the spring. The objective of this program is to provide opportunities to visually impaired athletes in these cities to play blind soccer at any level. Clubs will be hosting practices and special clinics and events to grow the game throughout the year. Our first 3 USA blind soccer clubs have been established, and we encourage all of you to do the same. As more interested people go to our website and look for blind soccer information, they need to know where they can play locally. Having a centralized location with existing programs on the Usaba website will accomplish that. Outside of community resource building, becoming a club will allow you to be eligible for funding and grant opportunities through Usaba, like the ITG program and exciting sponsorship opportunities our staff is working on. For those with programs, I will be reaching out to you on next steps. We're also in the process of adding officially Usaba blind soccer clubs in different locations. Another way we're growing the sport is through a national blind soccer coaching and educational summit that it'll be hosted in June at the Virginia School for the Deaf and Blind in partnership with Clemson University Paralympic Soccer. The invitation is limited to 1 representative from the 44 schools for the blind across the United States. Representatives will learn blind soccer curriculum and receive an on-site grassroots coaching license, specifically for blind soccer. Camp these summers are coming with camp abilities, and they will be hosting camps in different locations as well as Brockport, New York, and 10 other locations around the country between June 26th and July 2nd. In order to identify young men and women players who could be part of the national team, Usaba will be hosting a youth ID camp in Colorado Springs, July 18th through the 22nd. We'll be hosting 2 ID camps to identify male B1 players for the team that will be representing us at the 2022 IBSA Blind Football Central America Championships in Guatemala on December 3rd through the 12th of this year. We'll also use these camps to identify women's players for the national team. The first camp will be held in Baltimore, and there will be 1 more camp in June in Virginia. Since this is our first year identifying players for the national team, we are basing our invitations based on prior scoring opportunities or camps. We hope that as we move forward, players are able to join Usaba clubs and that we can scout future players on recommendations and/or videos from playing in their local clubs. We are aware that we'll have players that will now be close to a club or a program, and we're working on a system where players can submit videos showing basic skills to be considered for an invitation to a national ID camp. All these updates that we have shared will be on our website by the end of the month. Now we go back to Sarah Hartman.
Thank you so much, Jaime. I'm going to change the slide, which reads Women's Initiative with 3 bullet points. U.S. Soccer, She Believes Opportunities. Youth ID Camp, Colorado Springs, July 18th through 22nd, and the 2023 IBSA tournaments. As part of U.S. Soccer's ongoing commitment to empowering young women and girls while continuing to grow women's soccer in the United States and across the globe, the 2022 She Believes Summit presented by Deloitte will take place this week on March 18th and 19th in Los Angeles. As Kevin mentioned, our USABA CEO, Molly Quinn, will be in attendance, and our new sport ambassador, Bailey Martin, will be attending virtually. U.S. Soccer launched the She Believes program to unite and elevate nonprofits, women's sports organizations, and influencers with the shared goal of positively impacting girls and women. The event will be run in a hybrid model with both speakers and attendees participating in person and virtually. So tune in to our social media channels this week for updates from the event, and as USABA learns more about these initiatives, we'll be sure to keep you updated. Next, as Jaime mentioned earlier, women are invited to participate in the Youth ID Camp scheduled in Colorado Springs, July 18th through 22nd of this year. Women, we are looking forward to welcoming you to Colorado and working together to grow the sport. Finally, the women's side of blind soccer has been growing rapidly in all continents, with IBSA scheduled to begin official women's tournaments in 2022. The women's side of blind soccer is currently in the development stages in the Americas, and USABA's goal is to grow the women's game along with its male counterpart to make early strides in closing the gender gap with existing programs. Women are currently in a combined classification category, that's B1, B2, and B3. With IBSA tournaments opening opportunities for different continents, there could be an opportunity to attend IBSA sanctioned events in 2023. USABA is focused on growing the women's game, and we all play a role in making sure those opportunities are available. And now I'm going to turn it back to Kevin.
All right, thank you, Sarah. And we have another slide change. This one is titled How to Get Involved in Your Community, with the bullet points: find a club / start a club, recruit club participants, connect with USABA for resources, and we all play a role in building blind soccer in the US. So you're sitting there and you're going, wow, this is great. I want to get involved. I want to be a part of this movement. And what can I do to do so? Really, the best way to do it is to get involved at the local level. So whether you are in an area that already has an existing team or program, or you're in an area that doesn't and you need to start a program, USABA, our staff, is here to help you. And really what USABA's role is, outside of running the national team programs and running these grassroots initiatives, is to be that centralized location. And so if there's a group, let's say in Austin, Texas, and if there's 3 different groups playing blind soccer, and they may not even be aware of each other, we'll be that glue to make sure that people are working together. And if you're a person who maybe there's only 1 or 2 of you in a certain metropolitan area that are interested in blind soccer, but you want to find more people to join your team, to start a practice and get your program started, please reach out to USABA. Because we've been in existence since 1976. We know all the players, all the different partners in those cities. And so maybe it's not somebody who plays blind soccer at the moment, but more likely than not, we're going to have individuals in your city that are tied into the blind sports and adaptive sports community that can help you with these programs. And we're also here to try to help you as much as we can to find funding support or grant programs. We have a really incredible staff with USABA at the national level that's here to help. We want to help you get those programs off the ground, whether that's building your infrastructure, getting things set up properly, or even reaching out, finding sponsorships potentially. So our door is always open. Moving forward, probably the best person that's going to be leading that charge is going to be our blind soccer manager, Jaime Garcon. And Bill can pop Jaime's contact information into the chat to reach out for really any questions relating to blind soccer. Whether you're looking to start a community program, whether you're looking for drills to improve your skill set, or anything along those lines. Whether you're a player, a coach, a referee, a volunteer, somebody who wants to be involved in the game in some capacity. So this is really not just about finding players. We need, for those of you who've been part of the adaptive sports community, we all really play a role in the success of this sport. We need dedicated coaches, referees, volunteers. It all has to come together for us to have a successful practice, event, so on and so forth. So really, I can't implore enough. If you have any questions or ways to get things off the ground, please reach out to our staff, because we are here to help, and our passion is there. Jaime comes from a soccer background. He used to work in the Florida State Association there. So we're making those connections and those inroads in the soccer community, and we want to help you connect the dots and grow your team. So really looking forward to working with everybody, and make sure you follow the USA Blind Soccer social media channels. That's going to be the latest and greatest information. And I think at this point we're all wrapped up with our presentation, but we're going to open the floor to Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat or use the raise your hand function. And Bill, anything in the chat ready to go for questions?
Yes, we have one, Kevin, and I'll direct this to you because it's from Michelle, who lives in Colorado Springs. And she has a 7-year-old that wants to get involved in the sport, even if it's just as an observer of some of USABA's events or activities. What would you suggest for her?
Yeah, my biggest suggestion there, Michelle, especially if you're in Colorado Springs, not too far from our national office, we can connect. We'll get you a soccer ball. That's a good start. And there is a series of coaching education videos that our own Katie Smith put together, where you and your daughter or anybody out there individually can watch and have some great takeaways for learning some skills, even if you're by yourself. And then again, getting tied into our local community here. We'd love to have a discussion with you on some things, some other projects we're doing locally, and how we can get blind soccer growing here in Colorado Springs.
All right, once again, okay, we have one from Henry from Houston, Texas. He says there are no teams or organizations regarding blind soccer that he knows of. If he wanted to join a team from a different state, would he be able to? Maybe that's for Jaime or Kevin.
Yeah, I can start off, and that's something that we run into in like goalball, for example, where athletes don't have a team in their local area, but when it comes to tournament time, that athlete can become what's called a pool player, and really they join a team from a different city, so they still have the opportunity to play. It may not be with their local team, but when we know that there's a player in a certain community and they're having trouble finding athletes, especially a major metropolitan area like Houston, there is adaptive sports going on there. And that's where, reaching out to Jaime or myself to make those connections and help you get that program off the ground. That would be kind of the natural next step for us to take. And if you haven't connected with Jaime or myself already, I would encourage you to do so we can start that process. Jaime, anything to add on that?
No, we'll explain, Kevin.
All right, we have a question from Kevin Orcel. Kevin, you have your hand up, and please unmute and ask your question.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. And definitely thanks for the invite for the presentation. Two questions, really. One of them quick was just, are we going to be able to have access to the PowerPoint or some type of PDF presentation of it? But my second one was in regards to the blind schools, just any additional details in regards to process or structure, just because I imagine like that's going to be the biggest pipeline for athletes, considering a lot of them live on campus and they'll get a lot of exposure to the sport from middle school and high school and up until they graduate.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something, Jaime mentioned earlier, we're doing our National Blind Soccer Education Summit at the Virginia School for the Deaf and Blind. That's going on this summer. And we're going to get as many representatives from schools for the blind from all over the country to come out to that. And beyond just teaching these PE teachers what the game is and the fundamentals of the game, we're going to be having strategic planning meetings with them to figure out the structure moving forward into the school for the blind system. So questions like, all right, how do we help schools find funding to start a blind soccer program? Or what is going to be the season for blind soccer, given the existing sport calendar for schools for the blind? Because we know that's going to be a way for a lot of our youth athletes to be able to play. So it's a great point, not only teaching these educators how the sport is played, but how are we going to infuse blind soccer in school for the blind curriculum and programming, and do it in a group effort, so it's not it's not scattered as much as we can. We try to make sure we have a plan that's agreeable for most schools to follow, so that way we can start building out tournament structures and more competition opportunities for youth athletes.
And I'll just pop in and answer Kevin's first question. Yes, both a recording of this evening's town hall as well as a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation will be available in the blind soccer section of the USABA website.
Okay, Jaime, the next question is for you. It comes from Greg Lindbergh. He asks, can you explain the basic rules of blind soccer?
Yeah, so Greg is basically 5v5 for field players with a visual impairment and one goalkeeper that is sighted or could be a B2 and a B3. The field of play is 20 meters by 40 meters. The field is divided in 3 sections, Greg. The first section, if you're going from defense, the middle section, and then offense. On the defense section, the goalkeeper, who is usually sighted, can talk to the players and coach his defense. Once the ball enters the midfielder section, then the coach, the head coach who's in the midfield, can talk to the coaches and direct them. And then once the ball goes into the offense section, there is a guide behind one of the goals who's instructing the players as how, what strategy they're doing or directing them into where the goal is so they can stop the ball and shoot. Right now, the time of the game has changed a little bit. They went from 20-minute halves to 15-minute halves with a 10-minute break. That just happened last week. But it is basically just like regular soccer. 5v5, and the objective of the game is to score. There is one aspect that makes the game flow easily, which is the sidewalls on the side. That aspect keeps the ball in flow as well as the athletes safe. The ball does go out of bounds at the end of the goals, either on offense or defense.
Yeah, and then just to kind of add on to what Jaime said, for people that are playing in the community, you're not always going to have access to a full-length field, or there's very limited access to the official sideboards right now. If you're at an indoor soccer facility, you have built-in sideboards. So that's kind of a nice addition if you can get that. That being said, whatever facility you have access to, you can get creative in order to simulate a blind soccer field. And so that's another thing that, if you're curious on how you can customize your facility access to make it suitable for a blind soccer practice, feel free to reach out to Jaime or myself, and we can kind of walk you through what those options are. Bottom line is, though, no matter what, you can make it happen and make it work some way, and we'll be sure to point you in the right direction there.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Kevin. I think is important to share that you could play this game anywhere. You can play it on a tennis court. You can play it on the outfield of a baseball field. Literally, you can play it anywhere. And even if you don't have the walls and you have enough players to play a game of 4v4, you can have what is called a human wall, which is 2 or 3 volunteers on the sides. And as the ball's going out of bounds, they just stop it back. Or if the ball goes out of bounds, they shake it and put it back on the line. And that's one way to do it. I've seen locations where they turn plastic tables on the side, and that's used as a wall as well. We will be sharing more resources on how to play the game without the walls. There is an interesting game coming from IPSA in England, where you play 2v2 with no contact, and basically it's a really fun game where there's 2 players on one side, 2 players on the other side, and they make passes between them, and they try to connect the ball with a player behind the other team without attacking them. So from a distance, it's a really exciting way to play the game without having all the different restrictions. In general, you can play blind soccer anywhere, as far as, and I think everyone here is used to it. How easily can you adapt to your environment in order to play the game?
Thanks, Jaime. The next question is from Kelsey. She works at the Perkins School for the Blind in Massachusetts and wanted to know if the invites have gone out to the schools for the blind for the coaching summit. She wanted to make sure that her school received an invite.
Hi, Kelsey. We did send out the invitations, but if you have not received it, just email me and I'll send it to you. We'll be happy to have you.
And then David in San Diego is having a conversation with a potential site for blind soccer. He wanted to know if he should connect with them straight or discuss with them the basics and send them our way for clarification.
I would love to be in those conversations. You can contact me. You can put me in contact with them. Just to give you guys an idea, we have a lot of communication with different cities. And, you know, we're in some cities, we have one individual that is literally doing everything by himself. I have an example in Dallas. We have Mark Slavin, who took it up upon himself or wanting to have a club, and he did everything possible to make that happen. We have locations that we are communicating right now, like, for example, North Carolina with one of the soccer clubs there. Charlotte Independence, and they're established soccer club. They have a top soccer program. They're interested in growing the adapted sport community, and they're thinking about creating a club. We have locations like San Francisco, where we are right now in conversations with a local adapted sports facility, BORP, and they're interested in also creating a club. So we're talking to a lot of groups in order to make this happen, and you know, we would love to be in those conversations as well.
Yeah, and one thing that you might find is if you're reaching out to facilities, typically one of the first questions they're going to ask is if you have liability insurance. And so liability insurance is one of the things that USABA can provide for our official blind soccer clubs that Jaime mentioned earlier at a very reasonable rate. So that's something that's usually a must-have for facilities. And that's another thing that we can connect with you and Jaime and I on to make sure that's in place, because that's typically a major requirement for any facility.
And then Henry wanted to know if there was a new date for the soccer ID camp that was scheduled for LA this month and had been canceled.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, due to COVID, we had to cancel LA. We are looking at different options, maybe in this spring or fall. But I mean, you know, unfortunately, you know, due to COVID, that was canceled, and we're looking at another date for a possible event, either in LA, San Diego, or San Francisco, and we'll be communicating those as soon as we get one.
And Hector says there are some people in Austin and San Antonio, Texas that want to start blind soccer. Should they reach out to the School for the Blind in Austin, since they're soon to be involved?
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that Schools for the Blinds have been a huge partner. The Virginia School for the Blind has a pitch. They actually purchased the walls. You know, they have a program there. In Baltimore with the Maryland School for the Blind and Tim Taylor. He has the walls, he has a program going as well. So yeah, Schools for the Blind can be clubs, and we're talking to a couple of them, not just for their students, but for visually impaired athletes or people interested in the community.
And Kevin, Michelle wanted to know what the age range is for the Emerging Stars camp this summer in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, for that one, we're looking at ages 14 to 18. So more information, probably in about mid-April, we'll be announcing the official application process. And if you follow us on social media or on our newsletter list, we'll have more information when that's ready.
And I see Kevin Orcel with his hand up again. Kevin, go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sorry. This one was just in regards to any thoughts with partnering with MLS teams, not just for the teams itself, but mainly with their players. I know one quick example was the Boston Celtics did a video where they're showcasing their players doing playing go ball on their court. So just kind of like taking something like that to the next level and using players who already have a soccer following and also play the same sport as ambassadors to help with visibility.
I can take that one. Absolutely, Kevin, right on. We've already had several discussions with different MLS teams, especially in the communities where the Innovate to Grow programming is taking place. So
Hey, Sarah, we just can't hear you. I don't know what happened.
I think we lost her.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you so much, Katie. How much of that did you hear?
I would just redo it all.
I'll just do it from the top. So Kevin, excellent question, as I said before. And right on, we have met with several different MLS teams and the door is wide open to have those discussions. We think that they're great ambassadors too. Many of the MLS teams that we've spoken with are in our Innovate to Grow markets, where we have the funding to build blind soccer at the grassroots level. And I'll mention, you know, as an example that in a recent camp in LA, in conjunction with Angel City Sports, some members of the women's Angel City Football Club came out and participated. So that's exactly the kind of energy and enthusiasm and support that we're looking for. And if you have any contacts or inroads, this is for everybody, please go ahead and contact us. You should have Jaime's email and he can always connect you with me.
All right, looks like we have a hand up for Ahmed. Ahmed, go ahead with your question.
Hey, good evening, guys. My question is, do we have confirmed dates for the camps? I know Jaime spoke about the April, Baltimore and Virginia in June. Do you have any confirmed dates, Jaime?
Right now they're tentative, but we're looking at June 24 through the 28th or 25th through the 29th. So that's what those are the tentative dates that we have for that camp. Good to have you on the call, Ahmed.
Thanks.
All right, I don't see any more questions in the chat. Philip Wilkinson, I did see you had your hand up at one point, but maybe you don't need to ask it, but if you want to go ahead and ask a question, please do, or anybody else. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
I'm sorry, can I ask one more question? This is Ahmed again.
Sure.
So for these camps, is there going to be like players who played the sport before, like attended clinics before, or only like new players will be joined, or like is it strictly for players who experience blind soccer?
Good question, Ahmed. So obviously, you know, this is our first year and we have not established a more efficient way of scouting and a recommendation process for players. So we're basing a lot of the invitations that have gone out for the B1 camp for men and girls and women, based on prior experience where in camps that we have seen or recommendations from coaches that are in our staff. And as I mentioned in my presentation, after April, I'm gonna have a system for players that are new and that, you know, don't have access to a club or an opportunity for us to see them, where they can submit a video showing, you know, specific skills. In that way, we can bring them in.